Welcome to Five Questions. I'm Jeff Blyle. Today it's five questions on artificial intelligence with Monica Rogati. Monica is an executive data science and AI advisor with a passion for turning data into products, actionable insights, and meaningful stories. Prior to becoming an independent advisor, she was VP of data at Jawbone, and before that, one of the early members of LinkedIn's data science team, where she developed LinkedIn's key data products for job matching and recommendations. Hi, Monica. Thanks for joining us here on Five Questions.
Hi, Jeff. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, to get us started, how do you define artificial intelligence?
I've been thinking about that, and it's a bit of a moving target. And the simplest one I could think of, the simplest definition I could think of is any technology that appears smart and adaptable, right? So, but using that definition, then you have things like autocorrect and autocomplete. And you could say, hey, those are AI, right? They're smart, they're adaptable. And you could think that GPS is AI, especially when it's taking into account traffic patterns, or even a dishwasher with an auto cycle, right? That's AI. Hey, it's adapting, right? It's smart. So yeah, as soon as we get used to a particular technology, a particular aspect of a technology, once it's part of our daily life, it just no longer has that mysterious or sci-fi air that kind of makes us think of artificial intelligence, right? So it's a little bit hard to pinpoint where that boundary is. But there is a slightly more complex definition where you have a particular behavior that's explicitly coded in, or whether it's derived from data, right? So that's closer to the definition of machine learning, and some people conflate the two. One example, I have what you call a smart sprinkler controller, right? So there's a difference between coding in, hey, don't start the sprinkler if you've seen more than half an inch of rain. And it does that. My smart sprinkler controller does that. Versus, hey, keep an eye on the plants, and if they look a bit wilted, water them. Or even more sophisticated, hey, run 10,000 watering experiments, take on small portions of a crop, record temperature, record soil conditions, air conditions, humidity, and all that. And then find out how much you should water and when to water, right? In order to maximize the yield for that crop, right? So that sounds a little bit of sci-fi, but it's actually pretty straightforward from a machine learning point of view. And it's not so straightforward from a logistics point of view, but hey, that's a whole different thing, right?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about AI for businesses.
hmm
Practically speaking, what can AI do for a business? Like, in what kind of use cases have you seen AI be used effectively?
My experience is around consumer internet at LinkedIn, and hardware and health at Jawbone. And then I spent a lot of time advising dozens of companies in all sizes, many domains. So there's quite a bit there. It varies from company to company, of course, but there's some straightforward, more general applications, and simple things like predicting that a customer is going to churn, and finding the best intervention, how to stop it. I worked in recommender systems for a while, and showing people on LinkedIn, showing, hey, here are some groups you may like, here are some jobs you might want to take. And that's the type of thing where the business impact is easier to quantify. I've seen reports in e-commerce that you have 35 to 50% of the revenue coming from product recommendations. So those are the kind of things that are a little bit easy. And again, whether you consider that AI or not, that's a whole different question. But there's a more complex and more interesting ones that are around depersonalization, about building a product, a data product that's smooth and that feels smart, the product experience that's really personalized and easy. And that's important because now you have a whole generation of what I call data natives or AI natives, and they expect everything they interact with to be smart, quote unquote smart. And they get frustrated when it doesn't, right? Why is my GPS auto completing a restaurant 1,000 miles away, right? Why do I have to press why do I have to press the same button to change settings on my coffee maker every morning, right? The same buttons every morning. It's like, come on. Or less trivial, right? Why do I have to fill out the same forms over and over when I go to the doctor? And so that's relying on my imperfect memory and my records and so on. So that's a little bit harder to quantify from a business point of view. But I'm arguing that if you're a business, you can't afford not to do it, even if it's not full blown AI, but maybe simply remembering yesterday's settings on that coffee maker.
Well, following up on the can't afford not to do it, What role
Hmm.
do you think AI should play in an organization's business strategy, and how can it be integrated?
That's an interesting question because it depends a lot on the stage of the company and the problem they're trying to solve, right? So I think that's the first question. What problem are you trying to solve? How do you define success? Do you have the right data to solve it? And it's a little bit ironic, but it's hard to predict whether AI efforts are going to be successful. Or if you look at past data or past experiences that companies have, the default answer would be like, no, it's not going to be successful. But if you decide what success looks like, to me, that's the first step in the strategy. What metric are you trying to move? By how much? And it turns out that's actually not easy because companies don't. Sometimes they don't agree on what are the right metrics to move or what they're trying to do. And I think it's important to take a step back and decide on that first. And I actually have an example from a client. I usually work with companies, and that's the first step, thinking about, hey, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to move? And more often than not, you have executives and founders and people at a company not really agreeing on what that is, right? So that's interesting for me because I come in and that's the first step. So it's important to step back and look at that. But I did have a situation when I went into a client and I asked them, hey, what is the metric what are you trying to do? And they're on the same page. They all agreed that this is the metric we're trying to move. This is what we're trying to shoot for. And to me, that was just absolutely amazing. And the first step that I recommend the data team does is put that metric up on the wall,
Yeah.
monitor it, and see that any effort that they're working on, it can that really be tied back to that metric, or is that more of a long-term play, or what are they trying to do, since that we all agree that that's a metric to move. And so it turned out that that's not necessarily something that a lot of data science teams know about, the thinking, the strategic thinking that goes on at the top of the company. So aside from that, let's see. So once you have that, you have that, you know what you're trying to do. You can keep yourself focused on the goal, or you could realize that, hey, this is not feasible. Let's work on a different problem, or this is more important. And then the next step is to see if you have the necessary data to get there. And is it in a shape that can be directly used, or do you need to label it? Do you need a human in the loop? Do you need to process it, clean it? Do you need new data? It varies from company to company. And then you have to decide if you're going to get to the goal by using AI to optimize your internal processes, or if it's going to be something that's customers facing. And that affects your strategy. It affects how you build your team. So that's another step towards defining your AI strategy. And just thinking in general about what's inefficient and what can be optimized. Is data literacy something that's valued at our company? And if not, that's the first step.
Beyond asking these necessary kind of strategic questions about what problem a company wants to solve, do they have the data? Are there other resources they need or other infrastructure a company needs before it can really get started?
Definitely, there's a lot of work that needs to be done around seeing if you have the right data, right? So that's the first step. Or if you need to acquire new data, and do you need to build or buy, right? So there's a lot to do there. I actually have a Medium post that could be relevant for this, around the AI hierarchy of needs. Because I do run into this problem a lot. A lot of people are asking, "Hey, I want to do some AI. Where do I start?" And it's a bit of a long road if you want to do everything yourself. And it starts with data collection, making sure you have the right data, and making sure you can store it and move it around. If you can transform it and explore it and aggregate it and so on, you just really have to deeply understand your data. And that's a necessary condition to move forward.
As an advisor on data science and AI, you've worked with companies ranging from companies that have like single digit number of employees to
Hmm.
companies that have thousands of employees. Can you talk about how the smaller size companies are utilizing AI?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so the good news is that you don't necessarily need a giant team of data scientists and so on to start out with, right? So the reason bigger companies need all of these resources is because they already exhausted the big gains that can be made in the beginning,
Mm.
right? So the smaller companies have to think first about collecting the right data, if they have some unique data that they're trying to collect, and do they have enough to get something useful out of it, or are solutions out there that, or like image recognition is an example, that work for your goal, right? So so a lot of times I do kind of push back a little bit on the small companies and ask them, hey, why do you want AI? Think about that, right? So at least
Yeah.
you can be honest with yourself. Sometimes that's kind of necessary to signal to your clients or to investors that you're up to date with the latest and greatest and so on. And that's a legit reason. I'm not dismissing it. But you have to be honest with yourself. And if that's why, then you can just do the easiest thing. You can just do the simplest thing that lets you say I'm using AI and make it not a lie, right? So you can download some TensorFlow, you can apply it to some images, feed that back into your product, and say and be honest about telling your clients or investors that I'm using AI, right? So if you want to use it as a signal, okay, right? But if you have a problem that you're trying to solve and that could benefit from AI, that's a different question, right? Because you can there's some resources out there where you can use open source packages or publicly available data, and that's the best when there's a product that solves a problem without much customization from your side. And so that's the build or buy question.
Yeah.
When it's it To me, buying a solution is only appropriate when it needs little to no customization, right? And I am a little bit skeptical when you have a company that's promising that they're gonna handle the machine learning for you. But the problem is that if you want to be able to use that product, there's a ton of work you need to do, that I was mentioning before, around collecting data, cleaning it, understanding it, building the right metrics, building the right features. And so some companies do this for you, and they have to in order to get their product to work on your data, and that's kind of their main value add, and that's fine. That's great. It works for both parties. But if a company is promising machine learning, but it's not really doing the work laying the foundation for it, then that's not very useful, because by the time you do all that yourself, the last step is actually not the machine learning or AI step is not that big of a deal, right? So now, I said that the good news is that you don't have to build a lot of machinery to start out with.
Right.
It's actually more important to try to look at your most important data that are pointing you to your most important metrics, and see if you can analyze it with just simple methods, or just simple. People are talking about logistic regression being the example of, like, hey, if you're trying to use AI, have you tried logistic regression, right? So trying simple methods, making sure the data is accurate, going back and re-recording the data if it's not accurate, which more often than not that's the case, right? So if you have a big team, it's not going to help if they join your company and they realize that you actually haven't instrumented your product to log the relevant data. And so that happens way too often. You have somebody joining a small team, and they're being promised they're going to do machine learning, and it turns out they don't have the right data to do anything, right? So I would recommend avoiding that scenario and just trying to gather the right data and trying to do simple things with it before, and putting an experimentation platform in place before bringing in a fresh PhD and promising them that they're going to do machine learning.
So, Monica, to wrap up, just in your dealings as an advisor, when you're advising businesses, are you sensing that there is any difficulty in kind of separating or distinguishing the reality from the hype regarding AI?
Yeah, actually, I'm seeing that a lot. A lot of people do. They want magic to happen, and it's true that sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But sometimes they have to do the work, right? And I did actually write another Medium piece around machine learning AI and the Emperor's Vest, when I was talking about how, hey, people think it's kind of the emperor's new clothes, and it's full of jewels and it's amazing, and we're pretending to see that, but the reality is not that the emperor has no clothes. That's not what I'm saying, but he's wearing a vest, like a cargo vest, and it's very useful. It keeps him warm and so on. There's a lot of advances in AI machine learning that are actually producing very, very useful and relevant results. But there's still that hype of, hey, there's a lot out there that it can do magic, even if we throw bad data at it. And it's a good question because humans don't have a good intuition about what's easy and what's hard for machines unless you're a domain expert. So that's a little bit harder to unpack, especially if people call you in to help them with AI, and you have to go back and say, hey, you know what, that's great, but let's focus on simpler questions around, hey, are you able to count your whatever you're doing the right way? Are you able to clean up your data? Are there outliers out there that you need to see why they happen and so on? So yeah, so it is a tough question for a lot of businesses, definitely.
Well, Monica Rogati, thanks for talking with us and answering 5 questions on artificial intelligence.
My pleasure, Jeff.